All right, welcome back. We're so excited. Today is really fun. This is like on a whim. I was chatting with our guest today, Karee Atkinson, and I'm always hearing cool things about Karee, working in the background, working for children with dyslexia. And you and I first met back in 2019 at a rally at the US Capitol, which was so fun. And everyone kept telling me, you got to meet Karee, got to meet Karee. She's a mover and a shaker. And I was so blown away by the network of people that knew you and that knew about the cool things you know how to do. And so, but I know you have a political science background.
Yeah.
So tell us, how in the world did you get from doing this political science to the OG world that you're in now?
Well, life has twists and turns. I am dyslexic, and I was one of those really rare dyslexics in the 80s that was given the term. I had a teacher for 1 year who knew dyslexia in 2nd grade, and she didn't know what to do for me, but she knew enough to give me some verbiage of what was going on with my learning style. And I kind of went, okay, some things are hard, and kept going. And then I was never very good at spelling or writing. And so there was no way I was doing that professionally for the rest of my life. And I loved politics. So I got a master's in political science, and I was a lobbyist for the American Federation of Teachers. And I love state houses. It's where I think the rubber meets the road and where people work together most of the time. And I love that environment. And so that's what I was doing professionally. And then I had children, and my oldest son, not surprisingly, struggled to learn to read. And I went to his 1st grade teacher and I said, I'm dyslexic. Could this impact him? Because I had no idea. And she gave me the best answer ever. She's like, I don't know, but you go find out and I'll help you and support you any way I can.
Oh,
wasn't that a great answer?
Yes.
And so I went and found out, and I found a tutor through some exploration, and found a group of like-minded people, and we started Decoding Dyslexia Utah in 2013.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that you like these things, because when I was there, I was overwhelmed with like how this is all working. What's the purpose of this rally? How does this really make a difference, right? And I'm so glad there's people like you out there that like this stuff, that are moving towards making change, because as you know, it's not like the skill set is readily available and found inside of public schools.
Right.
So thank you for doing that work. So along the way, as a parent of 4 kids that all need help, you've learned that services are expensive. And
Yes.
it's just how it goes. Dyslexia reading therapy, our therapies that we do with math side, or maybe you have a kid with ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
These therapies are so expensive. Would you shed some light on why? Why are these services so expensive?
Oh, well, I think it's really driven by 2 main things. The format we do it in, it's 1-to-1. It is 1-to-1. You are tailored to that specific person seated across from you. And that shrinks how many people we can contact, right? And then the other thing is it takes a lot of training. I started out as a parent and found my way through some twists and turns that we're going to talk about, more twists and turns, to eventually getting OG certified, when I realized I don't want to pay for tutoring for all of my kids, because there's 4 of them that are going to need it. And so when I was back east, I lived back east for 2 years, and I got trained through the Rankin Institute, through the Orton Gillingham Academy. And that training's expensive. We've paid for all of my training and all of the curriculum. And then I've done the next level of training, the certified level, and it costs quite a bit to do that. And then just so I think mainly the cost in the training, and that it's one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I could put 3 kids in a room, yeah, I could do it a little bit cheaper, but what you lose is my ability to customize to that one specific kid.
Yes, absolutely. We found the same things. When we first started out providing services, we did offer group classes, and we learned the hard way that just isn't going to fly. These kids need such different things, even though they may be the same age, they're not doing or processing in the same way. So we changed it. We moved all back to 1-to-1. And I think that's a really good reminder that that's the best way. And yes, the training is expensive and it takes a long time to get. So I'm a certified multisensory instructor for mathematics. It took me 5 years. That's a long time, a long time. And a lot of people don't have necessarily the time or the resources financially to be doing that. And so yes, those are such good reasons why it's so expensive. Let alone like as providers are paying taxes on top of those things, and it just piles up. There's so many expenses that you're not thinking about as a parent that you and I and other providers are dealing with
every day. Yeah. And I'm on my 5th year training too, because I'm within 30 hours of finishing my last practicum. So yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot. Ooh, congrats. I'm so excited for you. That's a big deal. You're so close. It's so exciting. So one of the things that I always hear when I hear Karee's name, it's always tied to Karee showed me this, Karee taught me that. And it always seems to be related to getting funding for these services. So you know some creative ways to get funding for these children. I would love to hear your ideas because I think a lot of people could really benefit from this.
I'm going to kind of start broadly and then tell you more of my journey. So we all have talents. We all have like skills in our wheelhouse, right? Yep. My wheelhouse was politics and communication and making connections, but we all have skills. And so use what you have to help your kids. Right now, if somebody showed up and said, I will run all of your marketing and social media, if you'll tutor my kid, I'd be like, done. Right now, like let's trade. You spend 2 hours a week doing that. I'll take because I need those services. So sometimes being a little bit creative. I know parents who have done websites for some like tutoring centers and have done an exchange or a swap. I've heard the same thing with accounting services. So what skills do you have that could benefit a company or an individual, and what can you work out? Yes. The first.
I love that idea. I think one of the craziest ones I've ever heard is the guy built a huge deck for a tutor, like just did this beautiful landscape for their backyard in exchange for dyslexia services, which is really creative. I love it.
Yeah. And it's something like that really could work. What I tend to navigate people to is one of two things: resources that you can try to implement yourself, because that's how I got started on this journey. I had been working with school districts trying to help them get funding to train their teachers. And so one of the superintendents called and said, hey, it's Sunday's coming into town and doing a 3-day training. Do you just want to come up and train with us? I was like, yes, please. And that was my first round of training.
That's so cool.
Just because I'd made those connections. So building those connections, being involved in your school in whatever way you can, really has benefited me and my kids, both of us. Then other things I always direct people to is kind of know what's going on in your state. So I've sent you 2 different websites of different states that have funds that parents are able to use. And it's going to be a little bit different in each state. So I'm going to talk mainly about Utah. It's where I am currently. So we have currently 2 different funds. So there's the Carson Smith Scholarship, and that's if you have an IEP or a 504 in public school, it's going to pay for you to go to a private school, which is very helpful. It's going to pay a portion of the tuition, I should say, not all of it.
Sure.
The other one is Children's First Education Fund, and this is where I'm sending more and more people to. And it's if you either have that IEP from a public school, or they can do what they call a multidiscipline evaluation. So it's evaluation by several different people with credentials, and that say, yes, this child would qualify for services if they were in a public school. So that one is exclusively for homeschooling students. So if you are homeschooling your student, or you choose to pull your student out, you'd have to wait for like the next calendar year. But not a bad option for some of our kids who are struggling so much in public schools.
Yes.
And then you get between, depending on what the evaluation looks like, between $8,000 and $10,000 a year in Utah that you can then use to pay for tutoring or like even curriculum or combination thereof. that same type of scholarship, and it's called vouchers in some states, which I know has a not great appeal to some people, but that is available in 21 different states. So I know North Carolina, Arizona, I was just looking at the map. So more back east, but it's growing out in the West. And it just gives parents some options. Something that's coming that just passed our Utah legislature this year is, again, for homeschooling parents, and it will start next summer because it's the next fiscal year. And it'll be for any homeschooling parent. You won't have to prove disability.
Wow.
And it will be money, but it's like a small pot. I think there's like 5,000 to start with. So It's not huge, but it would be huge for those families.
Yeah.
That they can use that to pay for any homeschooling service, and whether that's curriculum or tutoring services like you and I offer.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
Yes. And Arizona is expanding more and more of those things. Like recently they passed being able to use funds for private schools, which was not something we'd done before, but it may get turned over. I know that happens. I mean, yeah, that just happens.
It does.
We have similar things like the ESA fund here in Arizona. And it's very similar. Got to prove that, I've got an IEP, kinds of things for pulling my child out. And then you receive services that you go and find. And they do have directories. Do they have directories in Utah, like of providers you could pick from?
The directory is being updated. So it hasn't been there, but they just got more funding. And so I think they said by fall is their goal to have that directory up.
That's awesome. That's really, really great. Yeah. Have you
exciting.
ever heard of parents having their children get involved with helping them raise funds for services like this?
I had a homeschooling family that did something similar. Like the kids had to all do paper routes, and it wasn't a huge amount of money, but what it did change for my student who sat in that seat is he appreciated it.
Yeah.
He'd put a little bit of skin in the game, and he was really easy to engage because he saw the value in it.
Yeah.
So I have seen that, and I appreciate it a great deal.
Yes, absolutely. And I think some of these students, especially kids with dyslexia, that can sometimes unlock a hidden talent they didn't know they had, right?
Yeah.
Like some of the most persuasive kids I know are the ones with dyslexia.
Yes, they're natural. There's a reason why 1 in 3 adults that are dyslexic are entrepreneurs. They are very verbose, many of them, and yeah, they have some negotiation skills.
Absolutely. And I think the bar to doing something like that with your child has never been lower before. You could start an Etsy shop together and sell jewelry. You could make cute prints to sell, t-shirts. There's so many things that you could do. And again, like full disclosure to people, you would say, like, this is to help my child raise funds for these services. And of course, that pulls on other people's heartstrings.
Yes.
I'm going to help Johnny so he can get his reading. So I think there's a lot of really cool ideas around that people could do too. Even though I know that takes more time, it is, I think, a fun way to do that.
And it builds skills. That's building, like we have in our area, there's a junior entrepreneurs club. Something like that would pair very well. And then you're building multiple skills because we should focus on their strengths as well as their weaknesses.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So on the flip side, we know that there's not enough providers. There just isn't. There's never enough people. It's a constant battle for us at Made for Math because even more so than OG reading, we can't find people necessarily. It's not like colleges are cranking out people with these skills. So we have to go and find the right people to join our team, and then we train them in-house. And I mean, there is multisensory math training out there, but often people can't afford it. And so what about those who are looking to either get OG certified or certified with us? What ideas or things have you heard of people doing to pay for programs like that?
Well, I'm going to brag a little bit about Decoding Dyslexia here because this is, I have 2 things I'm like, these are my favorite things about all the things we do. There's 2 that I just touch my heart. And one's our youth advocates. And that's where our teenage-aged kids provide trainings for the younger kids on how to self-advocate, how to find your strengths, how to use technology, and seeing those older kids own their story and then share their story. It is beautiful. It is my favorite thing. My second favorite thing is a new initiative that we did here in Utah is we have an OG trainer come out. So it's my fellow from South Carolina. We fly her into Utah, and a training can seat 20 people. When we take half of those seats and say, these are for educators, and we're going to give them a scholarship to make it more affordable. So Decoding Dyslexia pays for 3/4, and they're asked to pay for the remaining quarter of the training.
Awesome.
And then in return, they have to have a practicum student that they work with for 100 hours. We pair them with a practicum student who's from our parent population who can't afford tutoring but stands in need. So we're kind of hitting both ends of it.
Yeah.
We're getting the educators trained, and then we have a new cohort every year to add to those numbers because everyone is full. And then we're also hitting some of those kids who desperately need these services and can't afford them. I would love to see how this is going to, I'm excited about it's going to grow and change because programs do. But we should be able to train more people. And there's a difference between training and certification. And so we're kind of navigating where we can go with that.
Yeah, that's really cool. And so you're telling me that Decoding Dyslexia raises the funds, and how do you guys raise funds for that nonprofit to do that?
So we offer a conference once a year, Wasatch Reading Summit. It's on October 26th, 27th. You will be there this year, which
I'll be
so
there.
excited for. We also have Dr. K. I cannot pronounce her last name because it's ethnic. I'll say it that way. And I know I would slaughter it as a dyslexic, but she's from Texas A&M, and she's doing a whole session on comprehension. And it is unlike any comprehension training I've seen. It is so powerful. And I'm so excited for our educators here in Utah to have access to it. And then we're doing the writing rope. And then of course, your normal Dyslexia 101, science of reading and why that's important. And then we're doing 2 whole tracks on how educators can take the letters training, which we're at least finishing up here in Utah, and actually implement it. It's like, okay, you have the knowledge now. How are we going to put this into our classes? And so I'm excited. So the profits from Wasatch Reading Summit fund our scholarships. We're a non-for-profit, so we don't make profit. We just fund the next project.
That's so exciting. I really like that. I've also heard of people using things like Shriners sometimes will do certifications or trainings, but I don't know much about how that works. Do you happen to know more about that?
So the one I know is the Scottish Rites, and there's one up in Ogden. It's the northern end of the Wasatch Front, and they train volunteers. So they put them through a take flight training, which is OG based, and train them in that curriculum, and then they offer that at a significant discount. So I'm going to kind of run through some options I know of. So that one is in North. No, hold on. Really great reading is not in Utah. I can do this. Reading Horizons. There we go. Sorry, dyslexic moment gets us off.
Yep.
Reading Horizons has a nonprofit arm called Rise, and they're in like North Salt Lake, Layton area, and they offer it's mainly online, but they have a trained volunteer there with the kid if they get stuck, and it's another option that parents can explore if they can't afford tutoring. And then our scholarship are the 3 that I know of in the Utah area. In South Carolina, there's something called the Augustine Project, and they train volunteers to go into Title I schools, and they train them in Wilson. So there's a lot of beautiful opportunities. And like that with the Augustine Project, I would certainly volunteer to be trained and work with a kid in Title I, and I could also use that for my own kids. So there are options out there if you can look and navigate.
Absolutely. How do you decide as a parent if you're a good candidate for that? About getting the training yourself and doing it with your kids?
That's I had the hardest time with that being dyslexic myself, because I kept thinking this is my weakness too. And there are times where I can't find the words and I can't spell that word. But I think the most important thing is that you love kids and you're willing to work hard. And almost every dyslexic I know learns to work really hard, because it's how we survive. And it might take a little bit longer. It was very intimidating to walk into that class with all the educators and be like, I'm not an educator and I'm dyslexic, and let's learn phonics because that's so fun. But if you love kids and you're determined you can make your way through. And also, my fellow is wonderful. As soon as I disclosed my background, she did everything she could to support me in being successful, just as the tutor does to the child, right?
That's amazing. That's really encouraging to hear. And then a lot of people might not be aware of like decoding dyslexia groups, and that there's a chapter pretty much in every state almost, right? I can't remember if it's all 50 yet.
They're in all 50, not all of them are active. So I think there's a few states that the leader has stepped away and they haven't found any replacement yet. But they are active in most states and in, I believe, several Canadian provinces. And I want to say New Zealand. So
that's awesome.
Look at Decoding Dyslexia, connect with other parents. That is the greatest resource, honestly, is connecting with other parents and working together.
Absolutely. I know I get a wealth of information just by following the Utah chapter, and other people, if you live outside of Utah, you can be in that group too. It's not like you guys are exclusive or anything.
No.
I'm in Arizona and they let me hang out in this group. But yes, very helpful groups out there. And if you are seeing in your state that your decoding dyslexia is kind of on the quiet side, maybe consider helping, getting more involved. I think, again, there's not enough people to help. And as far as like, if someone was to get more involved, Karee, with an organization like that, what would you guess would be the time commitment a lot of people are giving?
Oh, it really varies. On average, probably about 5 hours a month. So not overwhelming. There are times like around our conference, we all put in more time because it takes all of us to make that work. But 5 hours a month is probably an average.
Yeah. Okay, that's really, really helpful. Well, today we were planning on keeping this shorter for you all so that you can just hear what you need to hear and then take the ground running. Everything that we talked about, we're going to link up in the show notes for you so that you can head to those things and explore. And also, I would say to parents, just really embrace getting good at Googling. So now you've got some phraseology, right? You could put in scholarships and decoding dyslexia and your statement, or any kind of rotation of phraseology to help you find what's available in your state. But Facebook is a really good place to go look for those groups. I'm pretty sure almost all of them have one. And then again, you can join the group, ask around, see what people are doing in your specific state. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you wish I would have asked, Karee?
Yeah, again, I mean, my political background, I worked as a lobbyist for a teachers union. And so having kids with these challenges, I thought there was like the right way to educate a child, and that there was a little bit of righteousness in supporting my public schools. And I still support public schools. My kids are in our neighborhood schools. Every time we advocate for teachers as part of the solution and as our partners. But I've taken a step back instead of being a right way to educate, there's meeting the needs of the child is what is really important. And so I've changed my perspective on like vouchers and homeschooling and charter schools. There is not a way that's going to meet all the children. And the most important thing here is that child meeting their needs. And so I would just encourage all of us involved, because whether you're that public school teacher or the parent or an advocate, we all love kids. That's why we do what we do. Otherwise, we'd be doing something a lot easier that makes more money, but we love kids. So support each other. It doesn't have to be a battle. I can support my public school and love that and advocate for use of the scholarship because there are kids out there who need it.
Yes.
And so just to embrace maybe a different perspective.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And I think with that, we'll lead into our joke for the day.
Okay. So my background's in political science, so it has to be a politics joke.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, everyone can make fun of politics, right?
Yeah.
One way or the other. How many congressmen does it take to change a light bulb?
Oh, I don't know.
It takes 2, one to change it and then one to change it back again.
That definitely feels like the political environment we live in now.
Doesn't it?
I love it. Well, Karee, where can people connect with you if they want to learn more about your services and what you do?
My website's Utah Dyslexia Solutions. And so just Google us there and you can see our contact information and what we do, what services we provide.
Awesome. We will put that link in the show notes. Thanks so much.